You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, we got myself, and we got the Headless Giant, and we got Jules, we got Branch, and we got Chris from Channel KoK with us today. Just in case you don't happen to know who we are, and if you happen to be a new listener, we're going to let everybody introduce themselves. Headless, my man, please let everybody know what your deal is and where they can find your amazing work.
Thank you. I'm the Headless Giant. You can find me on YouTube and X under the Headless Giant. And if you have any kind of occult weird stories, you can send them to my email and we will read them. My email is headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. And that show is on Thursday nights. Check it out.
Awesome. Yes. Send those emails in. Definitely. And check out, if you haven't checked out that live yet or check out that show yet, check it out. And then we got Jules from Greypilled Podcast joining us today as well. Always love having you on, my man. What's up? And let everybody know what your deal is, please.
Always love joining you guys, man. It's always a good conversation, and
Yes.
we always end up kind of learning something or getting something out of it as well. Guys, I'm Jules, host of the Greypilled Podcast. I have a few shows I do. I run production for Austin Picard and Jose Galison show, Already Dead, every Tuesday, 8:30 Central, live on Rumble X and YouTube. I am co-host of Sound Science with the Paranoid American. We do a couple of those every month or so. Also the co-host of Elohim Etymology with Adrian West. And then I have a Sunday show I do called Sunday Chaos. Greypilled is just my voice is cracked. My brand, I guess you could say. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Greypilled Pod, Instagram Greypilled_podcast. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Patreon. Doing a lot of big stuff on Patreon. Just got some new stickers printed. This is one of 4 designs, the Elohim Etymology. Got some more stuff coming for all my Patreon people. So
That's awesome.
you can find me over there.
That's what's up, man. Awesome. Yes. And I will include all your links in the bottom now. I'm pretty well eventually. I have some of them in there now. I'll make sure
All the shows are on my one page.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
they're easy to find.
Yes. And finally, to Branch. Oh, sorry about that. To Branch and Chris from Channel KoK. I guess maybe we'll start with you first, Chris. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what is up with you guys?
Yes, I'm Chris, or as my moniker for my channel is King. Today you guys can call me King Weird, since we'll be talking about spiders and all the weirdness of weaving. But yeah, I do a channel called Channel KoK. We're alternative force against all the 3-letter network agencies. So, we're going up against CNN and ABC, NBC, AMC, TNT, HBO, doing all those mimetic magics of pop culture and film and all the occult side of things and all the esoteric and exoteric. And then my co-host for my channel, of course, is the Branch, and we have a awesome kind of back and forth, and we try to balance each other out as the King of Cups does. It's all about balance. So check us out, and we have all kinds of stuff on the channel for all kinds of different topics.
Yeah, we'll have to say you guys have covered some topics. I was like, that's actually interesting to think of to even cover as a topic. It's definitely going to be different stuff. Thank you very much for coming on. And finally, Branch, just to let people know, I did have this man on the show probably about 2 years ago. So it's very nice to have this man back on. I had a great time with him the first time he was on. So it was a pleasure. Thank you very much, sir. And let everybody know what your deal is and stuff.
Hey guys, it's nice to meet you all, and it's nice to be back, Nick. Thank you for hosting. So I just do a lot of this stuff for fun. I collaborate a lot, so I did create a link tree that I can share with him, and he can put in the description or something. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to even mention. So if you want to collaborate or whatever, you can reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm Apocalyptic Aesthetic on Instagram, and William Birkin there on Twitter. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And today we're going to get into spider symbolism, which I think is a great topic to bring up. I myself, in certain logos, I've used the spider. I don't think it may not necessarily be for the same reasons why we're going to talk about it today, but I mean, I have used the spider for symbolism myself in logos, but I'm normally taking it back to the optic nerve or the arachnid layer of your brain. I'm more of using it for physiology, but I do think the spider is huge symbolism used for many different reasons. So we got Chris and we got Branch, and I got Jules and Headless to talk about this for like the next hour and a half or so, however long it takes. So I guess, Chris, if you want, maybe, or Branch, whichever one of you want to start this off first. What got you into even doing it? Maybe, you know.
Yeah. Well, I used to be at the dawn of 2020 when, you know, everything that happened with the scamdemic and everything happened. I was introduced to a community that refer to each other as spiders and everything, and I just went headfirst into mimetic magic and spider symbolism and weaving symbolism and everything, and I found my own synchronicities with the spiders, with spider symbolism. Before we started the show, Nick, I told you I did a review on my channel of the Spider-Verse movie, and as I was reviewing the movie, Spider hopped onto my computer screen and hung out with me for the entire interview, and then left as soon as I got done going live. Right before I joined you guys today, a spider crawled on my wall right before I hopped on the stream with you guys. So it's all interconnected and everything. And that's actually how I met the Branch. We met through the spiders community. Is how we got introduced to each other, and we do shows together all the time. And so I got really fascinated into this work and the work of the art of weaving, and it gets into, you know, I know you guys talk about occult topics. Really, chaos magic and mimetics is ancient weaving. And so I think that would be an interesting place to start. A good example would be, of course, the Norns in as the Norse mythology goes, or in Greek you have the Moirae, which is similar to the Norns. And it's a trinity of essentially goddesses, and they represent past, present, and future, or fate, destiny, and a will. And really, when you're manifesting, and I don't practice chaos magic. I'm not a chaos magician.
Thanks for making that.
I'm not
very professional.
Yeah, I'm not promoting that. I'm just describing to you guys what I understand it's about. When you're manifesting things, you're essentially you're weaving. There's an interesting book called Weaving Fate, Hypersigils. It's called Weaving Fate, Hypersigils, Changing Fate and Telling True Lies. And essentially what the true lies thing is really interesting. Basically, anything that doesn't exist in our reality is a lie. So when you're manifesting, you're turning something that's a lie into truth. You're bringing truth into our reality by creating something. And so that's a balancing of of the fates, you're going into this, your headspace, your imaginal realm is what I like to refer to it as. And what a lot of New Agers get stuck at is that imaginal realm. It's all, they just want to sit in this imaginal realm and, meditate and have everything get created around them. That's only half of the process. They're not doing the second half. The second half is the physical work, because we are bridges of the spirit world and the physical world. So if you're really wanting to manifest with chaos magic or New Age manifesting, whatever you're going to call it, or weaving, I would refer to it as weaving. To weave your fate, you have to balance the whole visualization aspect of it and with the physical work. You have to bring your visualization into the physical by doing some kind of physical activity or laboring, right? And that gets into memetics as well, and that's what hypersigils are. So if you create art, you're a hypersigilist, you're creating memetics. There's an interesting documentary called You Can't Kill Meme, and it's all about how chaos magicians helped Donald Trump win his 2017 presidency.
MAGA.
MAGA.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Hey, yeah, man. I've said before that Trump is probably the most powerful chaos magi out there right now.
Yeah.
One of them.
For his latest presidency, he even talked about weaving at one of his speeches, and it turned into, I don't know if you guys saw it, but everyone was making fun of him because he was like, the art of weaving, and he was like, he was being Trump about it and everything. But for me, it was a synchronicity. I was like, yes, he's talking about weaving. He's talking about bending his own reality to his will, and that's really what it is you have to balance your fates. To weave with weaver hands, you have to balance the fates. You can't be living in the past. You can't be always looking to the future. And if you're just stagnant in the present all the time, then you're not planning anything ahead and you're not learning from your past. So it's like balancing the fates. And to me, that's when you're talking about nostalgia, that's an imbalance of the fates, because you're always focusing on the past. And I think that's what 9/11 was all about, because prior to 9/11, everything was about the future and futuristic. And then after 9/11, now it's all this retro future memoberries, creating reboots and all this. So I think whatever energetic thing happened with 9/11 was there, it had to do with some kind of chaos, kind of magic, where the fates got disbalance. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting place to talk. To start out, I feel like, is this idea of what weaving really is from a spiritual, magical perspective.
To back you up on that, King, think about fashion since 9/11, right? Fashion has been stuck in the same perpetual place ever since then for 25 years now. There hasn't been a real big fashion trend that has taken off, and all these decades from 9/11 forward seem like they're all collapsed. It doesn't seem like there's a big difference in fashion styles back to weaving since that time period. I think when people do these magical workings, there has to be an offset. There has to be a displacement of energy. And we see that when it comes to creativity since 9/11, having to do with people's fashion. Before then, you would have new innovations, new technologies, and new materials used in all of this fashion type endeavors. But now we're kind of stuck. It's the only innovations that we have is what new apps you can put on these phones. Nothing's really changed.
Yeah, and I did want to tell something to King that, I know that Nick has had William Ramsey on the show before, and I've been reading his book on Crowley and how this 9/11 basically was, I think, the final work for a ritual to bring about the Aeon of Horus, right? And you see it in the Twin Towers representing 11, right? And you have the famous picture of Crowley doing his I don't know what sign that is. That one. Which I think does represent the towers in a way, as well as 11 being a thelemic number 2, right? So I definitely think it's tied into chaos magic, more than a lot of people know.
Yeah, and I never thought about his pose being connected to 11 and the Twin Towers. So thank you for bringing that up. That's fascinating. That also makes me think of that deleted scene from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie that they promoted it with, was Spider-Man catching bad guys in a helicopter in his web that was between the Twin Towers, and they had to remove it because 9/11 happened. So yeah, there's definitely weaving and spiders going on here for sure.
I didn't know that about the deleted scene.
Yeah, it's still in the trailer. If you look up the original trailer for that first Spider-Man movie, you can still watch it. It was a helicopter caught in his web between the Twin Towers, and it's such a poignant kind of symbol to use in a movie, and it's so interesting. But yeah, they removed it.
This is an interesting symbol that comes from Norse mythology. They don't really have a good name for it because it didn't really come accompanied with any sort of explanation, but this is the Valknut. And the Valknut is these 3 triangles that make this knot, right? And so the Valknut represents not only the 9 worlds and each one of those different triangles, but it's also under the legs of Sleipnir, Odin's horse, right? So you've got this idea of movement, of mind, associated with Odin, and also the idea of sacrifice. It's also included in sacrifice depictions. So you've got this idea of the 3 fates sort of coming together, producing these different worlds, the 9 worlds of the Norse mythology. So the idea of weaving is so central to these sort of pre-Christian faiths, as you were talking about with the Greek mythology too. You've got the 3 fates, the one who measures, the one who cuts, the one who weaves. So these symbols are so central to the core of their understanding of fate and how to interact with the world around them, that I think it's shouldn't be something that's passed up. We don't really have an equivalent in today's society, but I think a lot of people are taking advantage of that fact, because if you can't see it, you can't recognize what's going on. You can't see the weaving as it's happening. And we can see this with numbers too, especially. The idea of understanding a weave is called topology. And so by intersecting a lot of these different numerical values and these different ideas into a weave, what you're doing is you're changing the course of fate using will. So I thought that was kind of relevant there.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that stayed post Christianity. That's why the Celtic crosses still have knots in them. And that just got moved on to a different Trinity, right? But since we're talking about Spider-Man, to bring up what is how it's still in our pop culture zeitgeist today, I'm going to rattle on it, kind of be a comic book nerd for a second here, but it's we in communities like ours, we talk about how the new pantheon of gods is superheroes. And there's not any better example than that than the Spider-Man character, I think. So the Spider-Man mythos takes and harnesses everything that we're talking about with the Spider-Man symbol. So in the Spider-Verse mythology, we have this idea of a Spider-Verse, interconnected webs, right? of multiverses. And what I think is interesting is if you watch the latest Across the Spider-Verse film, there's a character referred to Miguel O'Hara, or Spider-Man 2099. He's like a Blade Runner futuristic Spider-Man. He brings all the Spider Society to his holodeck kind of AR room, and he goes over this idea of a multiverse. And there's this, it's all black, and then a single drop, like dot, falls from what the ceiling would be, and is in the center of the room. And Spider-Man 2099 goes, "This is everything." And that gets into this whole idea of a primordial goo. The Stoics in Stoic physics, they would refer to it as the Logos Spermatica. And he goes, "This is everything." And this seed, this original seed source, continues to fall and then gets planted. And so that's the 1D in metaphysics. That's your 1D dimension, the dot. Or in Taoism, that's the non-duality of everything, right? And then when it gets planted, it turns into a tree, which is, of course, like timelines and trees and everything. That's Yggdrasil. That's the tree in the Garden of Eden, of course. But that's like lineal time. That's the 2D. And then from that 2D perspective, that tree goes out in every direction and becomes a spider web and gets interconnected with itself. And that's where they get nexus points. And in the Spider-Man mythos, they refer to it as canon events. And those are events that have to happen. These are these pillars of moments that have to happen so time could exist, so reality can exist. And that's like Uncle Ben dying, of course, is a big one, right? He has to give Spider-Man the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" moment. Like, he has to have that moment. So that's a Nexus event, because that has to happen. And Miguel O'Hara tells the Miles Morales Spider-Man that he has to let certain people die. He can't stop his certain events. And it's all goes back to this whole, do we have free will? So the whole conflict in the latest Spider-Verse movie is Miguel O'Hara says the spider people are supposed to maintain the web, what they refer to the Spider-Verse in the comic is the webs of fate and destiny. They have to maintain the webs of fate and destiny by making sure these canon events, these nexus points happen, and nothing prevents them from happening. And they don't have any free will to go on beyond that. And Miles Morales' character, who, I mean, his last name is Larry Moral, so he's talking about the morality that he can't morally stand by and let someone die, right? So he's all about, oh no, we do have free will. And so that's how this spider team gets split up, because half of the spider people say that they have free will, the other half say they're only the doers of fate. And the Branch and I talk about, we have these lightning in the bottle moments where the idea is going to get done no matter who it is you're the conduit for whatever God has planned. We refer to it in our God the Playwright series as scripture. Like, you have to, God gives you a script, and then you have to go by it. And yeah, you can improv, which is free will, but you have a script, you have a fate or destiny that you're entangled with. And I think Stan Lee, when he was creating the Spider-Man character, he was tapping into this ancient symbol of the spider, and he wasn't fully consciously aware of it, and it's just grown through over time as they keep on evolving the character. And even Madam Web, who is the female grandmother elderly wise woman who's at the center of the Webs of Fate and Destiny in the comics. She's the blind seer, the blind oracle. She has roots in Hopi mythology with the grandmother spider. And even they tried to do a Madam Web movie, but they completely inverted the fates in that movie and sexualized it and everything. And we actually have a video on our channel where we go over that. It's called Webs of Desire. So if anyone wanted to hear us talk about that fiasco of a movie, we do talk about it. But in that movie, it was very memeable of a movie because how bad it was. In that movie, they bring in this idea of South American tribe of people who worship spiders, and that also has roots in our reality with I am probably pronouncing this wrong. There's a South American tribe called the Praia. Again, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but it's a native tribe in South America who their shamans use tarantula venom to go on their shamanistic journeys. And there's a documentary about them, and that's really fascinating. And they commune with these spider entities. So whether it's North America or South America, there's this idea of a grandmother spider. And that's what Madam Web is for the Spider Society. So Stan Lee was tapping into something. And to finish up here about this Spider-Man connection. One
thing I did want to add just real quick that you had mentioned that was something that I was going to bring up. You're talking about like the venom and stuff. That is like that has been, I think, like an idea about some spider symbolism that sometimes it could be being used for knowledge because, most venoms, if you do actually use it at a certain dose, can actually heal. So, and that's like the unknown knowledge about the venom, you know what I'm saying, or unknown understandings. So I have, you mentioned it before, I have heard of that idea of that understanding that venoms can actually heal is a reason you use spider as symbolism.
Yeah, and that's why like the idea of you taking a certain like poison or venom over and over in small doses can build up your resistance to that being used against you as well. I think there's a tribe of spider people, I just looked it up, in Peru that apparently gained arachnid abilities from the venom of a species of spiders that are native to that region. You have the Lakota people as well, who actually talk about this spider deity being a trickster god. I think his name is Iktomi. I think represents both good and bad. You mentioned duality earlier. You see that a lot in the animal symbolism. A lot of the symbolism has to do with our animal natures of ourselves, right? Like our lower natures, our carnal, I guess you could say animalistic desires and stuff. So yeah, I've seen that a bunch with spiders, just being known as like a kind of trickster deity.
Yeah. They're very much tricksters. And the two things that I've gathered from spider mythology is, one, like you said, they're tricksters, and two, they're always, and this connects to the whole fate idea, they're always in guard of some kind of fate or script. A lot of these, I believe it's the African Anansi mythology. I could be mixing up with one other one, but I believe it's Anansi.
Yeah, that's African. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was the one, and this is a common theme where they're granted like a great book or a great script or tome of how the story of the world, and they have this knowledge, this gnosis of how it was supposed to go, and there's kind of the guardians of that. And then usually the trickster part comes in is with that gnosis, it kind of go off the rails with power, right? They don't have the Uncle Ben to tell them with great power comes great responsibility.
Hubris.
Hubris. I like that.
Yeah. And they will usually fall from grace in a trickstery way by thinking that they can control fate because they have this access to the knowledge, to this.
That they can weave their own webs.
That they can weave their own webs, and they usually get cursed by becoming some kind of mythological spider creature monster,
like Neith in Egypt. Or Neith. I don't know how you pronounce it. That's very interesting, man.
And this book, Ovid's Metamorphosis, which was like 17 AD, right? It was really early on. He goes into the myth of Minerva or Athena and Arachne. And Arachne, this is in book 6 of Metamorphosis. He talks about how this woman who was bragging about how much she was the best weaver in the world. And so she challenged Minerva or Athena to a weaving competition and lost. And then Athena, as Minerva or Arachne is about to hang herself, Athena transforms her into a spider. And what's really interesting is I was painting the other day, and if you can kind of see that on the cover, my stencil got on there, and it looks like there are webs tying this person who's staring into the void to some sort of fate. So it kind of matched up pretty well.
That's cool, man.
That's cool. Yeah, Branch, there's a biblical aspect to the spider. Do you want to hop in here and weave into the biblical aspect of it?
Let's hear it, Brian.
Yeah, sure. The most popular reference would probably be in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 28. And so I think I have that here, yeah. So I wasn't instantly prepared. My apologies, but I do have it.
Dude, you're good.
Actually, I'll have to look for it. But anyway, what it basically says is the spider makes its web in king's palaces. So it's to imply that no matter how many servants the king has toiling away in his castle, keeping it spotless, there's going to be that, somewhere that can't be easily reached. And the spider's there, and it's able to basically enjoy hearing what's going on in the court, right? Which is a very privileged space. And so it's almost got this concept of eavesdropping, because the term eavesdropping comes from hanging from the eaves, right? Like a spider does. And in fact, that's kind of tied to the lore of shooting stars too, because in Solomon's Testament, when he's talking to the demons in the dialogues, some of them will explain the nature of falling stars and that they're actually eavesdropping, but fall from heaven because they don't have the strength to remain up there and listen in on what's going on in the court of heaven. So when I read that verse in Proverbs, I kind of imagine it as being like analogous to lower order spirits that maybe are trying to eavesdrop on heaven or the king's court, as it were.
Yeah.
But that was one of the verses that really jumped out at me.
Yeah, I pulled it up here so I can read it for you. It says, "The spiders taketh hold with her hands, and on the thread she spins, or on the flies and bees she catches in her web. This is a small creature, very wise. What a curious thread does she spin? What a fine web does she weave? With what extensions and proportions is it framed, as if she's understood the role of mathematics and architecture."
Yeah. Thank you.
So it's all about the spider taketh hold of her hands in the king's palace. Yeah, so it's talked about in God's court. There's this eavesdropping spider.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I would have never really made the connection between shooting stars had I not saw that in the Testament of Solomon, but they both have that eavesdropping quality, which in the Masonry, they refer to those as cowens. So the Tyler at the door, he probably would be clearing cobwebs and stuff too, I'd imagine, but there's some figure sometimes whose job is to keep those eavesdroppers away. So whether it be Heimdall on the Bifrost Bridge, or the Tyler at the Masonic door, or whatever, you got a bodyguard at the Velvet Rope for the nightclub. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that also gets us to, of course, Bohemian Grove and Weaving Spiders Come Not Here.
Hey, that was perfect. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I was going to say something to what Headless said about Minerva also being represented as the owl in Bohemian Grove, directed right to the spider as well. So I kind of find that a little interesting, how you got both those symbolisms at one place.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea there is that you've got this wisdom on one hand, and then you've got the hubris on the other. And
right.
Between the two, that's when you find this trickster entity. Are you exercising wisdom, or are you exercising hubris?
Dude.
When you brought up the Bohemian Grove thing, and so if you think about it, Alex Jones was very much like a spider. They don't want those folks around, and so if you're hanging out and spying on them, I mean, you kind of embodying what they don't want around, So I feel like Proverbs really captures that, because in a way, when they're all there gathered, that's like the king's court, right? And the owl is speaking to them and all. So we kind of contrast the symbolism of the owl to the spider there too, because spiders aren't necessarily diurnal or nocturnal.
They just choose to stay in dark corners. Going back to what Nick said earlier, I have this Manly Palmer Hall little book that I've reviewed before on occult symbolism of animals. It has an insect chapter, and it says, its shape makes it an appropriate emblem of the nerve plexus and the ganglia and the human body. Yeah, Nick. So you had something there.
It definitely starts to look like certain things that you can look at under a microscope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that also makes me think of, we're talking about Bohemian Grove, so, we can get into this idea of, celebrity worship and everything. And when I was working on my spider symbolism video on channel KoK, around that time, there, you had American Horror Story had a season called Delicate, and it had the Kardashians on it, and it was their like third adaptation of Rosemary's Baby. Like they adapted this story like 3 times in that series for some reason, but they used spiders to promote that season, and her pregnant belly was a spider, and then the doctor's goggles was the spider's eyes and everything. And they interconnected this whole idea of, a child sacrifice with controlling your fate. So I think that's interesting. And then around that same time, you had Doja Cat who went fully demonic. And while she was going fully demonic, her Instagram profile was of a spider. And then she went to some award show in a very scantily dress, cobweb dress and everything. And then you had Dune, and they had that weird BDSM spider creature on the Harkonnens planet that the Baron had. It was really weird. And around the same time, so you had all this dark spider symbolism in pop culture. Like,
was this at the same time that movie came out with Adam Sandler and he's in space?
Yeah, that was shortly before that happened. Yeah, he had all of this stuff happening in pop culture where they was kind of tipping their hat to weaving fate in a way, in a dark kind of twisted sense. It was the dark side of the trickster, you could say, for sure.
Well, you could almost say that in the story of Peter Parker, when he gets bit by the spider, he's being bitten by fate, right? And that's weaving a new fate for him. So it's almost like the call to adventure is coming through this spider symbolism.
Yes, definitely. And part of that as well, after he gets bit by the spider, and the Spider-Verse movie shows this so well, and that's why I love the animated Spider-Verse movie, because it's such a good example of it. Once they get bit by the spider, they get gnosis, where they can hear the narration, the internal dialogue, and he's like freaking out because he's just like, what is that voice and everything, and that plays into the spider sense, the Spidey sense as he refers to it. And so he's like, where is that voice coming from? And it's like he's hearing the narrator of his story, of his fate that's being woven.
Which could be interpreted as our lower or higher selves as well, talking to us and kind of being our conscious.
Somebody just had a magical experience.
Yeah.
I've always thought was interested with Peter Parker too is his girlfriend Mary Jane. I've always looked at her as the Scarlet Whore.
Wow, she does have red hair too.
Yeah. And if you listen to Megadeth's song Mary Jane and you think of the Whore of Babylon, it's the same fucking thing.
Oh, definitely. So that because it's just something that the Branch and I talk about quite a bit, and that's we talk about archetypes and tropes and film and stories and everything on our channel. And then we bring a bridge between writing and this whole Jungian idea to more of a metaphysical kind of occult kind of synthesis, and we talk about this modern trope of the manic pixie dream girl, which I gotta admit, when I was a teenager and a preteen, I devoured a lot of coming of age films, and they always have that manic pixie dream girl trope in those films. And kind of looking back at it, I've realized that manic pixie dream girl aspect, that's the Branch referred to as a Whore of Babylon. I refer to it as like a Lilith, like kind of character.
Same archetype, I think.
Yeah, it's like this dark feminine kind
dark
of
mother.
aspect. Yep, dark mother.
That Crowley talked about. Yep.
So there's definitely an aspect to that, and what that does, that's all connecting to initiations. And the reason why manic pixie dream girls are risen in present day, from my understanding, is in the 60s and 70s when the hippie kind of age kind of started, because all the male initiators was either at war or fighting, or in the office spaces, and they wasn't present for their kids. So kids would after school just be wandering the streets and everything, and then we seek initiation into adulthood, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So they're looking for an initiator. There's no male initiators around, but there was these hippie women. There was these manic pixie dream girl, hippie, wild woman archetype, right? And they give pseudo initiations of boys to men, not full men, not healthy men, but like pseudo initiations into a pseudo kind of half-assed manhood kind of thing. And that's what Mary Jane kind of does for Peter. That's the duality of the relationship, is that he's kind of that nerd and everything, and she's like, her first line in the comics was, "You just hit the jackpot, Tiger." Like, and she's always testing him. She's that fiery aspect. So she definitely is that archetype for sure.
Well, it's important to note the colors too. So he's Spider-Man is red, white, and blue, and that seems to be one of the themes in all of these things. Do you have any information on how relevant these colors are to the spider symbolism?
I could take
Yeah.
that if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go Branch. Yeah.
I think it's alchemical because if you look at the key of the tarot,
Dude.
the teeth of the key are red, white, and blue. Blue is the law, red is blood, and white is the purity or the stone, which another name for that is Peter. Petra is what it means, stone. And so, of course, if you want to look at it phallically, Peter is a Peter as well. And of course, you got your stones. So Tubal Cain maybe relates to that a little bit. But anyway, that's how I would relate it. So maybe he's analogous to the full pre-transformation, and then at some point he becomes, obviously he can't live a normal life, so in a way he's a hermit as well, right?
Also, something to add to that, red and blue together creates purple, and the purple, that's the veil of illusion. That's the fabric of our reality. So that's your fate. That's the web. The purple is the web. So when you bring the red and blue to synthesis, to alchemical process, when the divine masculine and divine feminine does the alchemical marriage, you get the purple, you get the web. So I see the fabric of reality as like a purple kind of web, and that's even in science. You have string theory, and string theory is all broken down into webs. And so when we're even in science, they even acknowledge this kind of primordial web substance.
Dude, the fact that y'all just brought all that up, I did on my Patreon this morning. Me and my buddy Subliminal Messenger, he's in the chat, I think. We reviewed chapter 3 of Initiates of the Flame, and it's the mystery of the alchemist. Literally everything y'all just covered, I touched on this morning. I just find these synchronicities uncanny, man. It's wild.
Spider symbolism.
It's definitely, that's when you know the weaving is working, is synchromysticism. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna have to check that your work into that out. That makes me think of one of my favorite books is Iron John, a book about men by Robert Bly, and it's all about the wild masculine and male initiation, and he weaves this idea of the Grimm fairy tale of Iron Hans or Iron John as a symbol of initiation, but it's not an initiation of the divine saintly hero. It's not a ascension initiation. It's a descension initiation and then an ascension. It's the phoenix. It's ascension through the ash, the fire,
the rebirth.
The rebirth, exactly. That's exactly. And I love that book. I love that work. I love talking about that topic. So I'm definitely gonna have to check out what you have to say about it for sure.
Yeah, dude. No, I'm gonna have you on sometime to talk about it, bro. I'd love that. I still have to get Headless on sometime too, but
yeah,
we'll make it happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Nick, I'm sure there's a lot of Kabbalistic references in the red, white, and blue, especially like the masculine, feminine, and then the white being in the eyes, having to do with Kether.
Yeah, I had even thought that too. Even with with Spider-Man, you get like the power and the glory, and then like the white. In my opinion, I can see that kind of being. I wouldn't say necessarily the middle pillar, but I mean, you get the power and the glory, and then once you cross over, you do get. After that, you're into the abyss. I would say you'd be going to Kether, which could be white. I do think there is definitely Kabbalistic symbolism in there with Spider-Man.
There always usually is in a lot of these ancient mysteries. It all stems back to that. You brought up the wild woman archetype, dude, and my wife has actually read this book on it. She went through this spiritual cleanse and apparently had a spider entity attached to her and removed. So there's that.
Yeah. Those definitely. I've heard stories. In Studio Ghibli. Make another film reference to aid us here. Think of the sprites from My Neighbor Totoro. I often have heard that there are some kind of like in between entities that are kind of like not they can be bad, they can be good. They're just kind of like in between entities, like the soot spikes that are kind of spider-like that just hang around.
Okay.
In zodiacal terms, that would be mutable, perhaps, right? Like they could be one way or the other, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you go back to the dualistic nature of a lot of it, a lot of the symbolism as well. I have a funny story that I'll tell real fast. Chris Matthew from Forbidden Knowledge News, shout out Chris. First time he came on my show, he told this story of this one time where he had dosed with psilocybin and basically met this entity it was a female entity trying to tell him that she was God. And like, you know, they always call God a man, this and that. And he was talking to her in his mind's eye, having this experience. And then he said all of a sudden he sees the head of this old lady on the body of this spider, trying to like tangle him up in this web. And he immediately calls out for Christ, and it's gone,
Amen.
untangles and fucking shoots off. Yeah.
I've heard powerful. Yeah, I've heard stories of like I guess you could say dream kind of creatures or dream weavers, I guess you can refer to them as, or sleep paralysis kind of creatures being kind of like or incubus and the succubus kind of taking like a spider-like form. There was a comic book called Saga, and there's a huntress in that comic, and she has a spider body, and then she's got a female torso, and she's kind of like that sultress, but then she also will will hunt you down and kill you kind of thing going on there, for sure. And then you got in Lord of the Rings, you got or is it Schlab or Schlab? I don't know how you
have it in the Harry Potter too.
Yeah,
we have the spiders that are in there. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
See, somebody said something. Don't kill spiders. Yeah, apparently, back in the medieval days, that was considered bad luck to kill spiders.
Yeah. I don't kill spiders. If it's not invasive, I'm just like, you can hang out.
Brown recluse, he's gone. He's cooked.
Yeah.
I had a thought to share, because when Nick was talking about the Keter and that symbolism, I couldn't help but think a lot. I know not all the time, of course, but how often do you see spider webs around bright lights? And so in a way, a web of a spider almost does kind of represent that.
Some veil.
Yeah, or a trap, The Keter's beyond it, but you got to get through the trap to get there, right? And so it makes me think also of the way we refer to the internet as the web. And we're all on the web right now, whether you're in the chat or here in the room with us now.
We're all connecting to each other.
We're all in the web. And so just a tangential thing, it makes me think of Stephen King's It, because he takes on the form of a spider at one point. And I see information technology, It, as being that spider and that trap and all that, because it's like they need it for their new world order. But in the process of building it, it's like they're creating the very tower that's going to fall. So we get enlightened alongside their progression to a new world order. So maybe that's part of how it falls, and the spider tower king kind of stuff maybe comes back together, because in that tower card it is the king and the pope falling from the tower, right? And of course.
Yeah, Rudolf Steiner actually talked about Rudolf Steiner had a prophecy that a great spider would come out of America and devour the world in a huge web. He basically predicted, the internet, what you're describing. And that's another aspect of it, is these techno spiders. So there's this whole other kind of weave we can go on about techno spiders and the techno arachnids. and getting into like what Branch is talking about, like the Tower of Babel or the Panopticon and technocracy and all this and that. But also to bring it back to another reference to something in pop culture, there's a show called Final Space created by Owen Rogers. And the whole idea is they're trying to get to inner space. And inner space is what is the final frontier. So that's why it's called Final Space. And that's where the Titans are frozen. And the Titans are wanting to get out and destroy the universe. And so they're trying to find final space, this inner space kind of nexus point. And once they find the gateway to inner space in that series, there's what they refer to as the arachnid texts, and they're the guardians of the threshold. So there's definitely is this like guardian of the threshold kind of aspect to it as well. Also, you have the red strings of fate in Chinese culture. And one of my favorite sayings, I'm really into Stoicism a lot. And one of my favorite Stoic Latin phrases is amor fati, which means love fate. And it's supposed to be this idea of loving your fate no matter what it is, whether it's good or bad, just giving appreciation that you're still drawing breath.
Right. And there's also the idea that you need the wisdom to make it out of the trap. And so wisdom on one hand, spider on the other. And going towards that white light, there's a big possibility you could get caught up in it before ever reaching that light. The moths don't have the wisdom to avoid the trap.
Well, and it reminds me too of how we're told to not stray to the left or the right, but for the middle. If you go through the middle of the web, you're not going to get caught, right? So it's like the way out is through. You don't want to stay in that. You want to go through that, right?
Yeah, I think someone in the chat a little while ago asked if there was a connection to threading the needle in the eye, and that's exactly the answer.
Dude,
answer that question.
Thanks. That's cool. Yeah, and we're told, by Christ that the way is narrow, right?
Yeah.
Bingo. I think there's a lot of North Pole symbolism too, in regards to the way out, and the ancients always associated the North Pole with sort of like the way out of this place. And being like the top rung above the Mount Meru, but getting there you had to sort of make it through the soul trap idea, and so there's a lot of things that sort of compound and add to that. But also you've got the Van Allen radiation belt. The only way out of the Van Allen radiation belt is through either the North or South Pole. How could they have known that?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. There's a synchronicity here. As soon as you said that, symbolic studies, Mario Garza popped into the chat, and that's his whole work. That's his whole shtick, right? It's northern symbolism, polar symbolism, right? I love it. But yeah, you're right. To borrow a little bit from Mario, actually, there was this whole idea of the North Pole being referred to as a will that turned, right? And you can also say that will is a will to a loom. So it's like the loom of fate. And so you're definitely onto something, Headless, about that. And what I find so interesting about that is with this loom of fate idea is actually seen in again. I like drawing connections to Hollywood because it's a middle ground for people. In the movie Wanted, like there's that movie with the curving bullets and everything, but if you actually watch that movie, the whole premise is these assassins are going after people that this loom that they call the loom of fate is weaving the names of. So if your name is woven into the fabric, then these assassins are going to go after you. And so these assassins are doing the bidding of this loom, but it's been taken over. It's been tampered with. It's only given names that's been approved by what's in that? Morgan Freeman's character. He tampered with the machine. He tampered with the Great Loom. So yeah, there's this whole idea of polar symbolism, and really quickly, another connection to a pop culture that is one of my favorite. What I refer to as one of the great modern mythologies, and that's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it's a story. The Avatar Korra, she lifts the veil by opening the portals, and that's when everyone can see the spirits and everything again. She opens up portals. So there's this whole idea here of what you're talking about, Headless, that I find it so interesting.
Right, and it's the bipolarity, and then it becomes the weave of this spiritual dimension. And in that show specifically, it was all about these two different good and evil entities wrestling for eternity. And it was once she was able to overcome the opposites that she was able to re-release this sort of spiritual nature onto the world that was before. You've also got the idea of the golden age in there too, and I'm sure a lot of this stuff has to do with what's preventing the golden age, what's getting in the way of it. And again, back to that web, there's some sort of web preventing that from happening.
Yeah, again, Rudolf Steiner, so many other modern people say that the entity for this modern age could most likely be a spider. So yeah.
Wasn't there, Branch, wasn't there a Freemasonic deity that had spider legs and like 3 heads? Was that Jebulon?
Yeah, the frog, the cat, and something else.
What
the man,
people
right?
say, yeah. But you're not taught that in Lodge. I mean, that you just have to believe in God, but you're not told what to believe. But if you don't believe, you're not admitted into the Lodge. But yeah, some people say at the top, like, the illuminated degrees and all that, Jabulon, which is a 3-syllable name. So it's if that is indeed the case, then it would probably be like the token or pass in 3 syllables or something like that. But that particular entity that you're referring to me, looks like the depictions, I think from the Diction now, Infernal, of Baal, which looks a lot like Putin, if you ask me. Which I like Putin. I'm not bad-mouthing. I'm just saying it does look a lot like Putin.
Dude,
anyway.
I know exactly what picture you're talking about. That does look like Putin.
Yeah, it's a spider with a cat head, a toad head, and Putin.
And then
apparently.
his face in the middle. Yeah. Not to get confused with Balls of Bull, who is represented by the fly, right?
Yeah. Different
Wow.
entity.
But
yeah.
People know, they don't know that Baal just means Lord, and that these are lords of certain,
I would suggest it's probably related, however, because Beelzebub could be related to the constellation Musca, which is the fly, and we find that in Aries, which is where Baal resides, in the Shemham Maforish. He's in the spring. He's like the first entity, so I would argue that they're probably even the same, one and the same, or that one's slightly above the other, because they're hierarchies. So because Beelzebub's a king. In terms of hierarchy.
Okay.
Whereas Lord, I don't know, you could, maybe Lord is something in his stead.
Well, it comes from Balls Zebul, and then translated to Beelzebub over time. You have Baal Haman, Baal Zephon, you got a few balls.
But again, that's going back to the alchemy of taking Nigretto and turning it into something else. So there is that pattern again and again and again.
I got you.
I found out something interesting about spiders. So there's a certain species of spider that will actually make pets out of frogs. Right?
Yeah, I've seen those.
And that to me is like, it just screams occult symbolism all over it. So you've got this figure of transformation being taken under the wing of this spider character, like all these different symbols that we've associated with it. And somehow this symbol of transformation is very closely linked to this spider of fate. So transformation and fate being sort of linked together in some sort of a pet master relationship.
Well, that's a lot like a familiar then, because when you see symbiosis occur in nature, it might be the birds on the back of an alligator, or whatever, or the lampreys on a shark. You'll often see like a dependent or some type of relationship like that. So there probably are spiritual implications to that, I would imagine.
Right. The spider will feed insects to this frog, and they're like, pets. It kind of gave me a weird feeling about, like, what if spiders were massive and they had humans as pets? Like, that would be kind of an interesting book there, because it's like they form this dependency network that keeps you informed, like if we're talking about the spiritual spider, and then we keep going back to it to get our nourishment instead of, looking to ourselves and being independent.
Well, and I mean, I kind of think that that's probably how the spirits that influence things here on Earth view us as pets, right? They can only influence so many of us at a time, I guess. But that's the thought that kind of came into my mind. But what's actually going on there is it's the spiders allowing the frog to basically eat the insects that would otherwise attack the spider's young and eggs and things like that. So it's interesting to me that the spider is able to subdue its instinct and acknowledgement of this symbiotic relationship. So it implies some type of intelligence is actually happening here, and they're doing this non-verbally, I suppose, right? So is it chemical? Like, how do they know, right? So
I think it's very weird, because you don't think of these creatures as being capable of this high form of communication, but then you look around and realize, hey, no, everything's talking. The squirrels are talking to the birds are talking to the, insects. It's all talking. And we're just not aware of it because we're so inundated with our own lives and our own selves that we can't even see the symbolism playing out around us.
Or in the case of Charlotte's Web, she's right.
Yeah.
Also, speaking to connect back with Dark Mother, if you watch the stop motion film Coraline, the other mother in it, its true form is a spider, and she is that dark Aryan kind of.
Your mic was cutting out for a second.
Yeah, we lost you because of the motorcycle. Sorry about that, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Or whatever that was.
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's that Coraline, the other mother, is that dark Cancerian smother mother, dark mother kind of motif. So there is wisdom, but then there is also this idea of desire. Like, are you desiring information, and like, are you going to get bit by the hand that feeds you kind of motif? So there's definitely this kind of tricky balance between all of it. And the last pop culture reference I wanted to bring up was in Stranger Things. The Mind Flayer is the spider. The big bad Vecna, he was obsessed with spiders, and so that's when he created the bond with the Mind Flayer goo stuff. He made it take a form of a giant spider, and so and it's why the Mind Flayer, the final boss, is a giant spider.
Well, the octad is always associated with intelligence, right? And so you've got spiders, which are way more intelligent than they appear. You've got octopuses, way more intelligent than they appear.
Super, like, out of this world intelligence.
Yeah, I actually connect. I'm glad you say that, because I actually connect octopi with spiders. I think that they're the oceanic spider. I think they're so much relative to relating to one another, for sure.
Right. And, eight-legged things can't have a spine. So there's sort of this difference in mentality that goes all the way back to the cephalopods versus the vertebrates, And one thing that comes up for me is Charlotte's Web, right? She's writing in that web. There's an intelligence there that really can't be comprehended by people, and it's fascinating to people. It's a pig and a spider writing to people.
She's like telling this pig stuff, and he's telling all the other barn animals, like, hey, this is what Charlotte says. And they basically all follow her instructions on everything, you know?
So if that were Animal Farm, does that make her a propagandist or something? Or like, I don't understand.
I don't know, man.
I'm glad you said that, Branch, because I was actually thinking the same thing, and then you said my thought out loud.
It's like, this is some pig. Well, it's like when the news tells me to vote for a politician. It's like, this guy's really great. I've seen that on the web, right?
One interesting thing I did find with that movie, maybe I'm thinking a little bit more of it than I should be, but it does introduce the idea of death to a rather young child. And the idea of loss.
Absolutely.
I think that's a huge thing, actually, believe it or not.
I think that's what having a pet is really good for too, is it initiates you into that understanding, because it's very abstract prior to that experience. And of course, if it happens and you're removed from it, then it's not very impactful, right? So I think that's probably why it's good for people to own pets, so that you learn responsibility and that you can have consequences from your actions or inaction.
Oh, one thing I did want to bring up, even with the spider, again, even with the venom, have you ever thought about like the idea of maybe like the death and afterbirth? I mean, the afterlife? You know, as being a symbolism?
Yeah. Yes, of course. So, we're talking about the wrestlings of fate and everything. I from my understanding from a lot of people who have had OBEs, out-of-body experiences, they will see like a golden thread between their spirit body and their physical body. So it's like a spiritual umbilical cord. So I think that is connected to the strings of fate that interconnect all of us. So I definitely think that there is a death and rebirth aspect of the spider.
I could add to that too, because technically a scorpion is also an arachnid, and that is a very common symbol for death and resurrection. Mm-hmm. But more to the point though, whether it be the fang, I've never seen like a figure really of the priestess holding a spider, but when we see her holding a snake in her left hand or the sword or something like that, that's the sting of death. So I suppose if your culture was, you had a very venomous spider, you know, the sting of death could be administered with a spider perhaps, but that venom is associated with Judgment Day, which occurs in the fall, according to the Jewish traditions, right? Yom Kippur. So you got mercy on the right hand in spring, right? And then in the fall, you got the Judgment Day that comes, and that's the left. And so if you weren't fruitful enough to balance the scales, so to speak, of Libra that she holds, then you get the sting of death, right? So in Egyptian, it was your heart was lighter than a feather, right? But in Judaic or Christian terms, it's how fruitful were you, right?
Well, that brings up Parmenides and his little spirit voyage to the Queen of the Night. Parmenides was a philosopher way back before, I think it was like 600 BC. And his poem on nature brought up the idea of traveling to this palace of the Queen of the Night, or Nyx. And in front of the Queen's palace, there was this figure who was holding this sword and these scales. Now, Parmenides on nature is what brought us into the idea of philosophy. From him, you get the idea of no contradictions, like contradictions are not allowed. And so from that, you have science springing off of philosophy, and the idea that you cannot resolve these contradictions, therefore you should disregard them. But in that poem, he talks about aletheia, which is the idea of this revealed truth. And from Aletheia, you get this goddess in Greek mythology that they made because of his poem. And this Aletheia is the reverse of what the Greeks considered the fate of the afterlife. So in this picture right here, she's holding the cup of Letha to the person who is returning to this river of souls right here. And by handing you this cup of Letha, it would cause you to forget your other lives and then return back into this world of the living. And you see the red flowing through the background here. That would be the indication of this blood knowledge, right? You see these little golden specks in that river right there, which would be this ancestral knowledge that you would gain as you would return back into the world of the living. That was a painting by a guy named Gustav Klimt, and that full painting was burned by the Nazis as they were retreating from this palace where they had amassed all of these great works of art. So this thing doesn't really exist anymore, so it's almost the perfect symbol of this afterworld reincarnation idea. So check that out. It's called Medicine by Gustav Klimt. And the idea is you have to have the revealed truth, which overcomes that forgetfulness of the afterlife.
May I comment real quick? Because as you were talking, it reminded me of the crucifixion of Christ when they offer him the bitter vinegar cup and he denies it, right? Then he goes and returns and then goes again to heaven. So there might have been something there going on where he's like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm not forgetting it. Or something, maybe there's something there to that. I'll have to look at that.
That made me think of the faith folk, of course, because you don't drink their drink, you don't eat their food,
or communion for that matter.
Yeah,
to be born again, those sorts of symbolisms.
Hades and Persephone. Persephone eats the 6 pomegranate seeds, and for 6 months out of the year, she's in the underworld.
She has to go to the underworld. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that you're bringing up Persephone, because they're I just did a episode where I reviewed Severance with Riley of Raised by Giants, and Severance and the OA are both modern TV shows that are inspired by Orpheus. And there's this whole idea of this journey to the underworld and then back again for knowledge. A lot of your like Hellenistic and pseudo-Luciferian mystery schools, even that a lot of like your Bohemian Grove Freemasonry is all kind of centered around, all kind of can be traced back to Orphic traditions, because after Orpheus came back, he started a bunch of mystery schools and cults where he swore off the gods and he swore off women, and he became homosexual, and he was initiating all these men into all these different kind of inverse practices, you could say it as. And that kind of gets to the Theosophical Society, and there was actually a book written by a guy named Edward L. Gardner. He was part of the Theosophical Society. He wrote a book called The Play of Consciousness Within the Web, and it was all about consciousness being this interconnected web interface, basically like a human supercomputer, right? And having to weave your fate with your gnosis and everything. The synthesis of what the Theosophical Society was talking about.
Even that word fate contains 8. I just noticed.
Yep. 88. That's why in Back to the Future they had to go to 88 miles per hour so they could time travel.
88 keys on the keyboard. And it was well known back in the day that Moses, of all people, was considered to be the tutor of Orpheus. And so Orpheus learned music through Moses. And so there was that big crossover there between the two of them. Because, you know, the teacher of the law is the one teaching music. And that is how this resonance sort of happens. It's through the laws of nature. And so Orpheus was said to be the, you know, student of Moses, of all people.
Well, another biblical figure known for his harpist ability was King David.
Yeah. And his mother was a muse, was one of the muses of music. That's why he was so good at it as well. And I think there's definitely a connection between the muses and the fates for sure. There's this, because when you think about it, if you're weaving, you're creating art, you're creating a life, a foundation for life, you need a muse. And that's going back to the whole masculine and feminine. You know, the man needs a muse, a reason why he's creating the life he's creating. And a lot of times that is women. That's the duality and beautiful, the beauty of the masculine and the feminine.
And you got 88 constellations, I think, right? So is that correct? Pretty sure. Well, it's at least according to the official such and such. I'm sure it's changed in number over the years. But
right, the 88 official ones. But before that, you had different constellations for the Greeks, different constellations for the Romans. They all had their own spin on it, but they would try to keep those 12 normalized so that you could have communication between these different cultures based off of the astrotheological symbolism of those 12 zodiac signs which the sun would travel through during the year. And the sun makes a giant 8 in the sky. Ana Lima.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, something that I didn't bring up earlier, one of the Nazca lines is a spider. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I saw somebody put that in the chat, or that you can only see it from up high, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So I think what's coming together here is that if you don't mess with fate, if you don't mess with the spiders won't mess with you. And pretty normalized in this idea of going on the hero's journey is that you can reject the kind of call to action, right? But you do so at your own peril. And in a lot of cases, this is what we see happening over and over again, is you have to accept that call to action so that you can be useful. And that's really what's at the heart of the spider symbolism, because even though, you know, you may feel trapped by it, unless you're willing to play out your role, you're not going to have a role. And that's going to change your entire life from that point onward.
Yeah. That I love that we're talking about this. One of the Branch of Mind's ongoing series on our channel is referred to as God is the Playwright, and it's all about this whole world stage scripture to play your part, you know, to go on your hero's journey, and of course have your will, but you have to dance with the fates, right? There's a very delicate dance. Don't tempt them. That's why you don't dare utter the words, it can't get any worse than this or something like that, right? You don't tempt them, because then they're like, oh, you want to bet? I can make it a lot worse for you right now.
It's happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done that to myself.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't want to tempt them, because you're putting it. It's that whole back and forth. Whatever you put out in the universe, you'll get back at you. So if you utter those words, if you tempt them, then they're gonna be like, well, that's what you're asking for. And that's why the Stoics was like, just appreciate what you have. You only can control your inner world. You can't control the outer world. I mean, I think that's why I think the Stoics had the right mindset, because if you practice Stoicism, you're practicing dancing with the fates, and you're practicing weaving in a sense. And it's the same thing with middle path and Jesus. You're doing that fine line dance, a line dance, if you will.
Yeah, David was said to have danced for God, actually, and it pleased him.
I found out that Stoicheia is Greek for the elements, and Stoicheia and the Stoicism is like elementalism. And so there's a big crossover between these two ideas.
There's stoichiometry and chemistry as well. I wanted to mention something about the weave of tempting fate. A lot of times master artisans or whatever, they would leave imperfections in their arts not to tempt, quote unquote, the gods or whatever they are. So there was just something else I wanted to add.
The Native Americans, when they're doing these masterful beadworks, would always include an off-color bead, so as not to tempt the gods. Again, same idea.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's also something to do with going back to the whole incubus, succubus, sultry aspect of the spider, and like the this whole kind of desire aspect of the spider. You don't tempt fate, and also one of man's greatest obstacles in life, one of his main trials in his hero journey oftentimes is temptation. So there's definitely a connection between your temperament and Stoicism, and mastering your temperament, and temptation and tempting fate. There's this whole thread all the way through all those ideas.
Right.
I can see that. You can see that going along with the lust card, the Thoth deck. To an extent.
Yeah, I think it's Brants that tell me be wary of women with spider tattoos.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
man, but this one.
If she's got a dagger or a spider, or a scorpion, just leave it alone.
Don't
Scorpion,
do it.
Yeah,
Scorpios
that makes me think of. We're talking about the relation between scorpions also being arachnids, and you brought up that story about spiders taking frogs as their pets. That makes me think of the fable, The Frog and the Scorpion. And the whole lesson of be careful who you trust. Like, if you have to judge a book by its cover, because if a scorpion is coming up to you and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to sting you," it's still a scorpion. A spade is still a spade.
Yeah, it's like Trump going on about his snake speech, telling everybody what the fuck he is.
I was just about to say that. Thank you. You're right. He's told us that story a lot, hadn't he?
What's the snake speech? I want to hear it.
Oh, please, Nick.
He goes on about, like, I think basically some old lady helps a snake, and then eventually it just bites her ass, and she's like, "Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "Bitch, you knew I was a snake." Like I am what I am.
He's got to tell his audience, fell for it again award.
Well, that's part of the karmic implication with magic, right? Is that you got to tell them or whatever, and if they just go along with it, well, you're karmically released from that.
Oh, they love what he says.
Right?
Bitch, you knew I was a snake.
Yeah. Even with the spider that you mentioned, and then you mentioned the scorpion. There's just one weird thing that I did think of real quick is that the spider has 8 eyes, and it was something I didn't know about the scorpion until Headless mentioned it. The shell is basically one retina, so I mean there is something even different with those two in eyesight.
Well, you've also got the crab, the horseshoe crab, right? The entire membrane is like this eyeball, and the quote unquote eye stalks that they have, one of the most primitive forms of seeing, are underneath that shell. So the whole thing is sort of looking up, and it's one of the oldest animals there is. It's looking up with its entire shell.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting stuff.
One thing that I haven't mentioned, but I think you guys will like this. There is a movie called The Adjustment Bureau, which is based off of a Philip K. Dick short story called The Adjustment Team, and it's all about fate. Essentially, it's this this bureaucracy of essentially angels. You could refer to them as agents of fate who make sure everything goes as planned, and is this whole corporate angelic spiritual bureaucracy, and a man whole journey of trying to go against that and get what he wants, which in this case is like this manic pixie dream girl moment where she was just supposed to ignite fire in him once and he was never supposed to see her again. But he's like, I gotta marry this girl. And the whole story behind it is that God has rewritten the script so many times that in previous iterations they was married, but he rewrote it to where they don't get married because he didn't see the need for them to get married anymore, is what they allude to. There's not really a reasoning. It's just like, well, God just rewrote it. You guys aren't supposed to get married anymore. She's just ignite your fire and then disappear from your life. And he's like, no, I will marry this woman. And so he goes up against these agents of fate. And the reason why he's able to is because they refer to it as there's also chance, and they have no domain over chance, which is just free will essentially. And so it's this whole like Romeo and Juliet kind of duality of two people from different worlds kind of colliding. And I think there was something very alchemical about Romeo and Juliet, and going back to the whole alchemical marriage. So I think that's another connection between the two, is this story that, because Philip K. Dick was a very mystical person. He had all kinds of crazy experiences and dreams and all kinds of different things. So I think
my buddy told me he ingested high amounts of vitamin C on purpose to try and induce schizophrenia so that he could tap into the spirit realm more easily. Yeah. Well, in the movie you were describing reminds me of Dark City as well, because there's like these entities in there doing what they call cueing, where they change the environment and they would come in when people were asleep and put everything back the way it was or whatever, and they'd plant memories in people's heads. So like you're talking about the manic pixie dream girl thing, well, this guy in the movie had like this image of a beach vacation that he had never had, but they had put there, and so that was like his fire that kept him going.
It was
Also
everybody's fire.
Truman Show stuff
wanted to get
too.
to Shell Beach.
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you've seen it, man. Cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me really quick. I've talked about this with the Branch before. There was a movie called Paris, Texas. It's by a director named Wim Wenders, and this is Hollywood references this movie all the time. It's a movie that everyone has never seen but has always seen, because your favorite movies and directors and actors invoke this film all the time. It's Americana, shamanistic American kind of film about this guy named Travis going on this shamanistic journey to have his American dream and reunite his family unit. He goes to the desert and everything, and goes on this whole psychedelic trip and everything. But he wears a red hat. Beyonce invoked it in her country album, her quote country album. Lana Del Rey has invoked it multiple times in music, in her song Paris, Texas. It was also Kurt Cobain's favorite film. Kurt Cobain went on and on and on about this film, and it spoke to him a lot. It's the American mythos really, and what the American dream is. But it all has to do with this red hat Travis shaman going on this shamanistic journey, And yeah, MAGA hat has a deep connection throughout history. But another thing that they're kind of weaving into their symbolism is this film using the red hat shamans and this whole idea of American dream. Because what does MAGA stand for? Make American Great Again. This idea of the bringing back the American dream. So there's something to weave on that really quick. I just wanted to add it because I find that fascinating.
Well, you've also got the red hat of the French Revolution, which was this connection way back to the what are they called?
The Phrygian cap.
Phrygian cap. There you go. And it just weaves all throughout time and space, this Phrygian cap. And it's back with the MAGA, the Magus, the magician. And we're all putting on the magician's cap, there's something to that.
And 2 presidential terms is how many years?
8 years.
There it is
Wow.
again.
Wow.
Yep. One tempting fate. I'll say one more kind of short story here about tempting fate in America. There was a story I heard about George Washington that I found super interesting, and that he had essentially plot armor. He had spiritual armor, and there was this story of it, I guess it used to be in our history books, but they took it out because it's not in vogue to talk about this story anymore. And that is that George Washington, he had he fought multiple battles before he became president, and later in his life he had this Native American, I believe it was a chief, who came to him as he really wanted to meet him. He goes, "Sir George Washington, I'm on my deathbed and I really wanted to meet you because I fought you in multiple battles, and I'm an expert marksman, and I hit you multiple times, and my men hit you multiple times, and you never took damage." And to the point where I told my men to stop wasting their ammunition on you because I believe that you are protected by the great force above for something greater in life. So it's this idea that when someone is destined for something, that they're going to have, I guess you can say, good luck, right? Because you have like luck as another opponent of fates and everything. So if you have something fated for you, if you're destined for something greater, I should say, you're going to have good luck. You're going to have some kind of what seems like spiritual plot armor.
Well, that's interesting too, because in the basement of the Capitol building, they have a huge mural on the ceiling, which is called the Apotheosis of George Washington. So they were including some kind of godlike symbolism around this character. And
I think it's him being like inducted into heaven, right?
Right, with all of the Greek gods around him.
Yep.
So there was a very, very potent symbol of what they were trying to create with this idea of George Washington. And you've got all these stories surrounding his fate, surrounding his destiny. And, we've lost a lot of that. And they don't teach it anymore because we're all supposed to believe that we're bad. We're bad people. We're all white. We're bad. We've got white privilege and all the rest of this crap. But I think it goes back to the idea that they're taking down the destiny angle of America, and we're not supposed to have that destiny. We're not supposed to think of ourselves like this. We're supposed to be brought down to the level of mortals and spit upon and all the rest of this stuff. So I don't know, maybe these script writers are looking for a third act. Maybe that's what they're going for.
Yeah, they're not only can you rewrite history, and it can impact generations to come. I mean, the way a good way of putting it is, if you a way to weave alternative, if you're not going to be working with fate and flowing with fate and you're entering that flow state, if you're not working up the current and you're working down the current, away from the current, and then you're going to have to find an alternative source. And usually, from what I think, that alternative source is, of course, rewriting history. Because if you rewrite history and then teach your version, your narrative to future generations, and then whatever they do for their future is going to be in line to what the rewritten past that they rewrote. So to stop that, to break from that cycle, you have to go back and learn true history, your true roots, and all that. And I think that's how why these Bohemian Grove people are scared of the spider, because they know that they're working against fate in everything that they do. So when they say weaving spiders come not here, they're saying fate, stay away from us because we're working against you because it's our will. Alistair Crowley's whole thing is a will. They're saying stay away. We have Minerva's owl with us. Stay away from us so we can rewrite our history and write our own future.
Kind of like the villains of Spider-Man, right? It's just like, stay away, Spider-Man. And Alex Jones is like, never.
Thank you for bringing that up. Something that I didn't bring up about Spider-Man is the movie Spider-Verse is different from the comics. The movie is cool, but they bring out way too much sci-fi kind of stuff and techie kind of transhumanist kind of side of things. The comics, it's all magical. In the comics of Spider-Verse, the villain isn't Spot or Spider-Man 2099. In the comics, it's interdimensional vampires called the Inheritors that feed on not blood, but energetic, agoric, tulpa-like figures that they call totems. And they are feeding on the spider totem because the spider symbol in the Marvel Universe is like one of the largest symbols, right? And so they come up with this occult ritual to take the bride, which is Silk, the first Spider Woman, and do this occult ritual to feed on all the spider people at once across the webs of fate, and devour the energy from the great hyper sigil of the spider. So there is something to that, especially going back to the whole Bohemian Grove and them working against fate sort of aspect. There is this kind of warring factions, it seems like.
Right. They have to kind of destroy the past so that they can shape their future. And the whole Bohemian Grove people are like, well, if we destroy the past, we can keep fate away from us. But I don't think it's working anymore. And it's all sort of going down the tubes. So all of these different stories are basically having to die along with their system. So there's this huge sort of concerted effort to take everything down with them. And unfortunately, that includes us. So these stories that they're taking down are now, basically including them as well. So,
yeah.
Well, you even see that in pop culture. Like, look how many times they're the most recent disaster was Snow White. I mean, I know that's not like a huge cultural thing, but it's the first animated movie, right? So it's like they want to attack all these stories and drag them down with them, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up, Branch. Snow White, what I think is interesting with that is Snow White was released, this new iteration of Snow White was released on the alleged last day of the Kali Yuga. And so I joke that Snow White was going to end the Kali Yuga and bring in a new age. And of course, Kali is often depicted on a white horse, right? And what does Snow White ride? A white horse.
What does George Washington ride?
A white horse, exactly. And which is crazy because, everyone's talking about this vibe shift in the zeitgeist since Trump won. And it's like the where it's kind of the pendulum is swinging in the other way a little bit energetically, and it's what is it swinging away from? It seems like all this woke crap is coming out of vogue a little bit, and what is a good example of that woke garbage failing? Snow White is a good example of that, of all the wokeism failing. And so I think it's interesting that Snow White being released on the last day of the Kali Yuga, ending this whole woke era, right? And so I think what the vibe shift is we're entering this other age, this age of, I think, what Branch would talk about as like dark MAGA, of course, right? Which is its own thing, but we're going towards this dark MAGA thing, but we're going away from this woke thing. And so I think Snow White was like this last kind of symbol of this death row of the woke age.
Well, yeah, you have Trump, who is known as like the Great White Hope or whatever, being the light side. Then you have the dark MAGA, very Kabbalistic as well, especially when you look into who Trump is taking a lot of these orders from, right? He has to go and kiss the wall and do all that fun stuff. Do
you think he'll build a third temple? Sorry to cut you off, Headless.
Oh, absolutely.
No pun intended. Oh,
absolutely, dude. I think, they're already calling him the King Cyrus, right?
Right.
So they've made a coin for him, and they're creating this image for him, and I think he is definitely involved. I think Elon Musk is a moonchild as well. So there's a lot tied in there. Like you said earlier, the MAGAs, all this great work that's happening right in front of our faces on this world stage. And then you really have to dig into some of this stuff to kind of get a grasp of what's really going on,
Well, imagine being a fly on the wall, or dare I say a spider in the corner of one of these rooms. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the wokeism sort of represented the controlled demolition of the American culture. Right? It was just everything American has to die. Everything is racist. Everything is bad. And then, you see kind of the towers that they've been trying to destroy since 2001. It's not taken. People aren't taking to it. It's, again, like in that fashion dearth, you don't have this progression. But since you've got a little bit of a energetic insurgence, right? That's kind of what the Trump represents in modern society, is this energetic insurgence. It's like, we're not going to go to bed quiet. We're not going to be the easily destroyed kind of culture that you want us to be. We're not going to shift the way that you want us to. So in a lot of ways, you could say that the controlled demolition people have now sort of taken a back foot. Well, at the same time, there's an undercurrent that you see happening with the Trump thing that's sort of leading us back into that destruction. He wants to bring about that end of the world, that eschatology, and people aren't having it. You can see it all around them. People are not having it. So that's a good thing, I think. In a lot of ways, spiritually, it's a rejection of this controlled demolition.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Someone in the chat, they said, what about sexually blackmailing wealthy degenerates?
Your mom. Sorry, that's his name. Your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
My buddy.
And that's the Black Widow program, right? You impay ultra these women to be assassins and to honeypot, of course, that's all. That's a lot of movies and like Marvel movies and everything as well. But in modern times, it's just the internet, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone you have your browser history, and then like they want to blackmail you with that, and who owns all the VPNs, right? That's supposed to protect us and everything, and all that. Who really owns this free domain of the internet?
Yeah,
Right.
well, me and my buddy Jose just did a deep dive on Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set and how they worship the psyche. And when you look into the word psyche, it comes from Psyche, which is I think a Greek goddess represented by a butterfly, right, Headless?
Yes, sir.
Now you see butterflies in Monarch programming, MK Ultra, all that stuff, and it's like, well, what the fuck is going on here? This symbolism is used a lot more than I think we know, guys. So it's good to have these kind of certain discussions on it, man. I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Sorry, go
the
ahead.
main mythology around Psyche is her love affair with Eros. Eros, love, and Psyche. And so these things are really linked, especially when you're talking about sexual blackmail. You've got to have this love between the Psyche and back to that, the pixie.
But here's another layer to it. She wasn't allowed to look at him. And so with these blackmail operations, there's always a camera they don't know is there watching them and recording it. That's so that's weird.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah, it's an Orphic tradition. Blackmail could be seen as an Orphic tradition. I'm glad you brought this whole like Artemis angle of it up, because Artemis is the wild woman, so that gets back to the whole like wild woman aspect of it. And I think it's interesting that you brought up butterflies, because the branch, we talk about cryptids a lot, and he likes talking. He likes bringing up Mothman, and
I'm from the area, where he's from. Yeah, man.
It's crazy, bro.
I can mail you some Mothman memorabilia if you want.
I got to get you guys on, man.
I come from more Midwest area, and there what I refer to as the polar opposite, speaking of polar symbolism, of the Mothman, and that is the Joplin butterfly people. And what I think the Joplin butterfly people are just angels, because those in the hierarchy of angels, there are angels with eyes in their wings. So if you're not familiar with
the Optimum,
if you're not familiar with what happened in Joplin a few years ago, there was one of the largest recorded tornadoes in history, and it wiped out the entire town. And all these people all had a similar story of being saved by butterfly people. And you say, well, maybe they just
casualties.
Whoa.
Zero casualties.
That's incredible.
And you could say, well, maybe they're talking about angels, so and which I think they are in a way, but why aren't they referring to them as angels? Because this is the Bible Belt, and so a lot of people are still Christian, still have the Christian viewpoint of what an angel looks like, but it's not biblically accurate, of course. So when you look at butterfly wings, you have all those patterns similar to a peacock feather, and which often look like eyeballs. So if they're seeing these angels with eyes on their wings, but they can't comprehend it because it's not in their modern day Christianity kind of outlook on what angels look like. Yeah, their dogma. The only way that they can translate it is saying that it's butterfly people. And so now that the town is rebuilt, those morals and statues of butterflies and these butterfly peoples all over this town, and it's like part of the lore now. And so I think it's interesting. Mothman, is a harbinger of doom. He comes before the catastrophe. These butterfly peoples came after the catastrophe, so it's like the light side of this high strangeness.
Yeah, the moth that also, sorry, Headless, keep interrupting you. Say the moth that also represents death, right? Like in this symbolism that we're talking about. So,
Silence of the Lambs.
That was also in West Virginia, same as the Mothman.
Right. So the Mothman is linked to the idea of its destruction, right? So the web of destruction, it's led right to that web of destruction. And then the butterfly is like transformation, merging out of, a bad situation, the chrysalis, into a greater form. but you've still got the same sort of wing eye symbolism on either one. So they're kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I think when I said the Ophinum, I think those are the angels with the wheels, with the eyes on the wheels.
You're thinking of the seraphim, right?
Seraphim, the seraphim are the fiery serpents with the eyes on their wings, right?
Yes.
Or is that the cherubim? No, that's not the cherubim.
I think it's the seraphim that does have the eyes on the wings. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the seraphim.
Yeah, since we're talking about butterflies and consciousness, something that I find interesting is the word reality has the same linguistic root as the word royalty. And so when you're thinking about your kingdom, it's what your reality is. Your kingdom isn't just your domain, your house, but it's everything that's in your perspective. And so,
makes sense.
And so when we have, when you align your chakras and you get your crown chakra and all that, and you step into your masculine or your feminine, I mean, you're a fully realized human, and you can weave your fate, so to speak. You're the king of your reality. And to reference Lion King, which is, of course, is just adapted from Hamlet, which Hamlet is adapted from the Viking tale of Amleth. Which is interesting that this story has gone on throughout time, from Vikings to Shakespeare to now, Disney. But there was a moment in Disney's version of this tale in The Lion King where Simba is on Pride Rock with Mufasa, and they're overlooking their kingdom, and Mufasa says, everything that's in the light is ours, and everything that's in the darkness is not. And that speaks to the magical word of no, right? Saying the no, I'm not welcoming this into my kingdom. I'm not welcoming this into my own reality. And if you can do that, then you're the head, you're the king. And that's where you get this idea of controlling your fate, controlling your reality, controlling your perspective. And the reason why they're wanting to force these narratives onto us, whether it's this woke crap or whatever terminology you want to refer to it as, is because we're like antennas, right? We're like satellites. So we're manifesting our own reality in a way all around us. And if they get enough people to go on with their narratives, then we're helping them weave their reality. So, because we're all tapping into their signal. Well, if you're your own king, then you're and you're weaving your own fate. You're projecting your own reality. You're saying, no, I am not welcoming these narratives into my own reality. So that's another part of it as well.
They could tell us what to believe, but it's up to us to believe them. That's the choice that we have to make.
Absolutely.
Part of the free will.
Yeah, and like what you said about this controlled demolition of our society. I mean, Albert Pike said in Morals and Dogma, when they need a hero, we will give them one.
Right.
So.
Right, but we don't have to accept it.
No, we don't. No, we don't, Headless.
I love it.
Feels good to not accept it, right?
Yes, it does. Good. It's empowering.
Yeah. Was there anything else any of you just wanted to talk about before we wrap it up? It's almost at a 2 hour mark.
This was a banger, dude.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we can always come back on again.
I can't tell you. I mean, the past few times me and you have been on, it's always been a very interesting conversation. Something that I look forward to again. So thank you for inviting me.
Always love getting you on, bro. Always, for real.
When we started, the clouds were just oppressive. It was all rainy, and now it is a clear blue, sunny sky.
Holy shit, Headless. The same here.
Nice.
What the fuck, man?
Good for you.
It's sunny outside now.
Yeah,
it's
go
been
out and
raining
enjoy your
all
day.
morning.
You're like, fuck, I don't want to podcast anymore.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, was there anything that you guys wanted to at least mention before we wrap it up that you thought was important? Or are you guys good?
I think I'm good. I made through all my notes. I'm surprised. I was.
Okay, good. I was
Thank
afraid
you
I cut
guys for
you off.
letting me rattle on so long. I know I'm long-winded.
No,
You're awesome,
You're,
dude.
yeah, it was totally fine, dude. Totally fine.
I need to have you on. I did want to read one thing, Nick.
Go for it. Go for it.
The magicians of the Middle Ages surrounded themselves with such creatures as bats, spiders, cats, snakes, and monkeys, because they were able to appropriate the life forces of these species and use them to the attainment of their own ends. Some ancient schools of wisdom taught that all poisonous insects and reptiles are germinated out of the evil nature of man, and that when intelligent human beings no longer breed hate in their own souls, there will be no more ferocious animals, loathsome diseases, or poisonous plants and insects. So I thought that was a little something to end it off with. Maybe
Kind of add to that a little bit, unless you were going to say something.
No. Go for it.
This book called The Golden Ass, it's often overlooked. It's from 2nd century AD. It is a novel by Apuleius, and in there he's got like 36 pages of the myth of Psyche and Eros. So if you really want to get to know their perspective on this whole thing and see the symbolism, it's in this book, The Golden
I'm about to buy it, Headless. I know I said it last time, but I'm buying it this time, dude. I'm buying it this time.
Sorry, he did mention it last time you were on, right?
Yeah,
that's bugged out. Yeah, I was like, I think he's mentioned that last. That's funny.
Sorry,
you,
Branch. What were you going to say, brother?
Well, I actually don't remember, but what I was going to say, I didn't. But one thing I can say, though, is spiders can be good to add to your gardens and such, because I try to practice integrated pest management. So using wasps, praying mantis, spiders, they do have a niche. Same with snakes. So, I totally understand not letting poisonous snakes or spiders or whatever be around, but like they do have a niche purpose. So if you're seeing spiders around your house, I saw some people in the chat asking like, well, what does this mean? Well, if you have spiders, you have bugs, because they're not going to stick around if there's no bugs, right?
Nothing to eat, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So, and maybe meditate the next time you meditate, think about the spider, because it does have some redeeming qualities. Like, for instance, they're very patient, right, and resilient. All animals live outside, and endure the elements the way they do. So, every animal's got something we can learn from it. And I find that the Twilight language, like the Bible and a lot of other books use, there's a lot of animals and trees and things like that in them. So if we take time to, outside the text, study up on the ecology of the creature, the horticulture of the plant, we can oftentimes gain a lot of insight. So I would just like to encourage folks to remember the spider isn't all bad, because if it weren't for spiders, we'd be overrun with bugs for sure. And I'm sure we can all agree that we hate bugs more than spiders.
You're right. I think that has to do with the duality of all these creatures, right?
Yeah, right.
As well as the intention of, your relationship with these spiders. Like, are they guarding your house from other bugs that could get in there and, tear shit up, or, more dangerous spiders? I don't know. But definitely, no, there's, people look at a lot of this knowledge as just being bad because it is hidden, right? They fear what they don't know. But definitely many ways to look at it.
If we are masters of our own fate webs, then it's up to us what bugs we're letting live in our webs. So you've got to be conscious of that and get rid of the garbage that's blocking up your web, because that's
Absolutely.
how you reach that fate that you're supposed to be at.
Dare I say, you gotta knock out the cobwebs. I actually remember what I was going to say. It was on the tail end of what you said, Jules, I think, or maybe it was Headless, but the spiritual authority, it was Jules. The spiritual authority we're given with Christ is to tread upon scorpions, snakes, the creeping thing, right? So each of these creatures, they occupy the lower kingdoms of the earth, of which man is at the top, and lion, of course, is below man. But the creeping thing is something that we're given authority to tread over, it says. So like you were saying there a little bit ago, I think there could be something to that.
Absolutely, man.
Those have spiritual analogous spirits associated with them. And this goes back to like the concept of cleanliness with animals and that sort of thing too, I think. Parasites and all that.
Yeah. Joel, as he was talking, you made me have a realization. Earlier you mentioned the spider taking a frog in as a pet. I realized so in the Addams Family. The Addams Family comics was created to be a commentary on the American dream and the white picket fence kind of family archetype, and their pet is Thing, which is a hand, but it walks like a spider. And it does their bidding. So I made that little small connection, and I thought that was
well. Here's something to add to that, because just last week, this girl shows up online with the robotic arm, and she can detach the hand, and she's like, oh, it even has Bluetooth, and she was like making her hand crawl across the table without it being attached.
That's wild.
So she's got her own technological thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some books on spiders. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a book on the Theosophical Society, which again, I'm not promoting these necessarily. I'm just saying these are books that I've looked at that have some knowledge into spiders. And that's the Play on Consciousness within the web by Edward L. Garner. Weaving Fate, Hypersigils, Changing Fate, and Telling True Lies by Aidan Watcher. That's all about chaos magic. If you want the more scientific, like string theory aspect of it, there is a book called The Fabric of Reality by David Duchette. It's all about the scientific aspect of what we're talking about. And then if you want to get into the Celtic knots and everything, Symbolism of the Cross by Renee Guénon gets into cross symbolism and crossroads and Celtic knots and all this and that in a metaphysics sense. In fact, the Branch and I just went over that book by Renee Guénon with Mario Garza of Symbolic Studies on my channel.
Mario's a big fan of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want more on that also gets into Celtic knots and this idea of webs and weaving.
That's awesome. Nice. All right. Branch, did you have anything you wanted to add? You want to plug anything before we start wrapping it up?
No. Just remind everybody that it's Saturday, so Shabbat Shalom, and to just pay respect to your deity today and read your scriptures, whatever culture you're from.
All right. Thank you. All right. So, Headless, we'll just go around and let you plug yourself, plug the show. Plug your show and let everybody know where they can find you. Oh, you're muted, sir. You are muted.
Again, I'm the Headless Giant, and you can find me on YouTube and X, and you can find me Friday nights doing the Future is Ancient Spaces with my co-host, Art Autonomy. She's got a space coming up tonight, so if you want to check me out on X, you can see me in that space as well.
I'll swing through.
Head over. And Jules, please let everybody know what is up with you, sir, where they can find your work.
Greypilled Pod on X. 20 more followers till I'm at 1,000. So let's help get me there.
Jump over, go over there, give them some more followers.
Greypilled _podcast on Instagram whenever I post over there. Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Patreon. I'm trying to push the Patreon. Got a few tiers on there. Also, 1 out of 4 designs of my stickers just came in. So y'all will be getting a sticker pack here soon on my Patreon people or locals, depending on where you want to sign up. Yeah, guys, I'm doing a show tomorrow night with John Lee Chaubeck, I think, later tomorrow night. Still haven't confirmed it yet. We're reviewing Crowley's Liber Oz.
Oh, nice.
Just doing a read-through of it and kind of our interpretation of it.
I'll have to swing by.
So, yeah, y'all look out for that. Got a bunch of shows coming up. Bunch of good stuff over on Greypilled, everybody. So, yeah. Thank you again, Nick, for having me on, brother.
Hell yeah, of course. Thank you. And Branch, And I guess, Chris, I mean, I don't know if you guys have separate things to plug separately besides the channel KoK, but I guess we'll go with you, Branch, first.
Well, I do have a link tree, so I'll provide that to you.
So please. Yeah, I'll add that after the show if you'd like me to provide that.
Yeah, and I can include that. So that's I'm trying to. I guess what I'll end up having to do is probably create a channel and just mirror all the content on it. But for now, that's what I got, and it'll have to do. But there's like 30 different collaborations on there. I tried to include a link to every person I've collaborated with on there so that you can find their stuff, and then there might be multiple other videos I've done with them, but I'm just trying to keep it organized because I never really wanted. I just kind of do this stuff for fun, but I guess after a few years it's starting to get kind of cluttered, so I gotta start organizing it lest I lose track of it. But yeah, if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm on there as William Birkin. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm Apocalyptic Aesthetic with 2 P's as in the phone app. So you can hit me up on there and chat or invite me to collab or whatever.
For sure. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like Robbie Marks, he's on Occult Reject. He doesn't have his own podcast, but he has a show that's over like 100 episodes of him being on other shows. So I get what you're saying, and yeah, that's interesting. Good for you. Thank you. And Chris, go ahead, sir, please.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at King of Cups, Cups with a K, TV, and then on X it's channel KoK TV, and then my YouTube channel is channel KoK, and the Branch is kind of my pseudo co-host. He's on the majority of my episodes. Coming up, we have a new series we are going to be launching called Archetypes, where we every episode we're going to be going over a different archetype. The first one up is the Messiah archetype, with the hero, of course, and of course we'll get to talking about other ones like Manic Pixie Dream Girls and Dark Mothers and stuff like that. But we're going to start at the beginning, one archetype at a time. So we got that coming up. We have our pop culture political show, the King of Branch show, where the Branch to Dark MAGA updates. And then I have a film review series called Kingdom Reviews that I do as well. So we have a bunch of stuff on the books. And then last night, like I said, I just released my Severance video with Raised by Giants, and that was a really fun discussion. Severance is such an interesting show to talk about, and it was fun having Ryder on and talking about it. So you can go check that out. Channel KoK. Thanks for having us on, Nick, and I'm glad to meet you guys.
Oh yeah, no, it was my pleasure, man. That was a great great talk. I'm glad to have you back on again. Yeah, and thank you everybody in the chat. There was a lot of people in the chat, even in the other chats over on Jules' side. And I don't know, Headless, were you streaming out too? I was pretty sure there was probably people on your end as well commenting. Thank you everybody who jumped in and had something to say. I appreciate it, and that's why we went live. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.